Welcome to another edition of Danny's Hot Takes, hosted by Mob Rules in Mob Rules Studio B. Today we're going to be reviewing Codex Space Marine, the new Space Marine Codex that that is going up for pre-order today. Games Workshop was nice enough to send us along a copy of this. Man, this review is going to be a doozy. There is a lot of stuff to go over in this book. Space Marines have changed a decent amount, but not a ton. But we'll be going over all the rules, the Crusade rules, honorifics, all that stuff that is contained within here, as well as the new chapter command rules, and a lot of other stuff. So there's a lot of things to go over here. Space Marines have it all. That's what they say, right? Yeah, I think so. All right. So as per our usual reviews, we're just going to be sticking to the rules of this hallowed document. Instead of going over all of the fluff and everything else for the review itself. But the fluff is really good. Read it. Get a better idea of how the Indominus Crusade is shaping up, what Guilliman is up to, and of course what the Ultramarines are better at than every other Space Marine chapter, which is everything. So... That's fake news, guys. That's fake news. So today we'll be going over rules, the Battleforged rules, the Army Special rules, Match Play rules, Crusade rules, data sheets, War Gear, the points, and then the reference rules in the back. Now, these videos will be broken up into these different sections, so get ready, because we'll be going over these as we go through here. So let's start with Battleforged rules and detachment abilities. So... detachment abilities talks about Adeptus Astartes get a couple of different things. So chapter tactics and company command. So company command basically just says that you can have one captain and up to 2 lieutenants per detachment. You can't take more than that for each detachment, which makes sense from a fluff perspective. In addition, troop units in an Adeptus Astartes detachment will get objective secured. And then you'll get chapter tactics if your entire army is from one Space Marine chapter, or not army, but detachment. So you can mix chapters if you want, just not in the same detachment to get the rules. And so then we get to the chapter tactics. Now this book is unique in that it has a ton of chapter tactics for all these. So it's all of the first founding chapters plus some additional second founding chapters and the Death Watch. So all of these books will be utilizing Codex Space Marines. Some of them have some additional restrictions on which units they can take, and we'll go over those a little bit later as we go through the book. But you can run your Dark Angels out of here, and this gives access to a bunch more units for all these armies that didn't necessarily have them. Everybody's getting Thunderfire cannons. Death Watch gets access to a ton of new units that they didn't have access to, probably more than any other chapter. They get transports now. Who would have thought? I know, shocking.
Crazy.
They get an impulsor. They get they get land speeders. Who knows, man? Anyway, let's go through them, and there's some changes to them. So Dark Angels is each time a model with this tactic makes an attack, unless that model's unit has moved this turn, excluding pylon and consolidation, add 1 to the attack's hit roll. And each time a combat attrition test is taken for a unit with this tactic, it's automatically passed. So Dark Angels had a rule where no more than one guy flees from a unit if they fail morale chest. So that's what the second part of this chapter tactic details. But also the other part was with shooting attacks. If you didn't move, you got to reroll 1s. Now, as long as you don't move, you get +1 to hit in melee and combat. So if somebody charges you, you're basically always setting to defend without having to spend points on it, which is great. Next, we have White Scars Lightning Assault. This is the same as their updated one from the Space Marine FAQ. And this is they can declare an assault if they advanced or fell back, and they can advance and fire assault weapons without penalty. Space Wolves has changed pretty significantly. They still get the first round of combat, they get +1 to hit, but they also get heroic intervention on all of their units. But their characters don't heroically intervene 6 inches anymore, but just everything heroically intervenes all the time. Imperial Fists ignore the benefits of light cover only, not all cover, And they, every time you attack with a bolt weapon, which they specify, an unmodified 6 gives you an extra hit, and not 2 hits like the preview was, because people were reading a very fuzzy picture of these particular pages. Crimson Fists. If you shoot at a unit that contains at least five more models than the attacker's unit, when it's selected to shoot, add 1 to the hit roll. And the vehicle units count as 5, so they get +1 to hit if they're shooting at squads with more dudes than them. And then each time a model with this tactic makes an attack with a bolt weapon, they score a 6, gives you an extra hit. And then finally on this page, we have Black Templars. Black Templars can reroll advance and charge rolls, but not any dice associated with the charge, so they no longer get orc charges. And then each time a model with this tactic would lose a wound as a result of a mortal wound, roll a d6 on a 5+, that wound is not lost. So pretty close to what they were at before. So next we have Blood Angels. They have the Red Thirst, and this is the same as their updated chapter tactic in Psychic Awakening. They get +1 to advance and charge rolls. And in the first round of combat, so charged, were charged, or heroically intervene, they get +1 to wound. Flesh Tears also get the +1 to wound. But instead of getting +1 to advance and charge, on an unmodified wound roll of 6, the AP characteristic goes up by 1. And this is cumulative with the Assault Doctrine, which is great. I'm glad that they did specify that. Iron Hands got changed pretty significantly. They no longer overwatch on 5s, but they do get to ignore wounds on a 6+, and they have they count double wound profile for seeing how good a vehicle is for degradation. Ultramarines is the same. They can fall back and shoot at -1, and they get +1 leadership. Salamanders did change, I feel like, fairly significantly. They can only reroll 1 failed to wound roll, and then they ignore AP -1. So that's a little bit of a nerf on them. And then Raven Guard is pretty much the same, but it's a little bit different. So each time a ranged attack is made against a unit with this tactic, if the attacker is more than 18 inches away, the unit is treated as having the benefits of light cover for that attack. So for vehicles and stuff like that, it's a little bit harder to get cover. And then each time a ranged attack is made against an infantry unit with this tactic that is entirely on or within a terrain feature, if the attacker is more than 12 inches away, then the unit with this tactic is treated as having the benefit of dense cover, so -1 to hit, which is nice. And so Deathwatch didn't really have a chapter tactic before. They got the extermination protocols or whatever they had before. I forgot what the name of it was, where they got to re-roll to wound roll of 1 versus a particular battlefield roll. And now they get to reroll to hit rolls of 1 versus Tyranids, Eldari, Orc, Necrons, or Tau. And after both sides have deployed, they get to pick 1 battlefield roll and reroll 1s to wound against it. So I think that's pretty good. They don't have as many ways with this to swap it out, but I guess we'll have to see what the day 1 FAQ is in order to figure out exactly how good they are overall. Successor chapters has had a few changes. Let's see here. They did change since Master Crafters or Master Artisans has changed. It's split up into 2 different abilities. So you've got, you've got Master Artisans, which lets you reroll an attack roll. And then, let's see, I'm trying to remember what it is. Oh, I don't think maybe they don't have a wound roll. I guess it's just an attack roll. I thought I saw both. Okay. Well, you can reroll an attack roll, so that's something that you can do. They did change long range marksman to only be rapid fire and heavy weapons. So, and excluding flame weapons specifically. So you're not going to get those 15-inch flamers that you've always wanted with that. But yeah, Hungry for Battle is still advance and charge rolls. Indomitable is still you ignore combat attrition like the Dark Angels. You still have Inheritors of the Primarch. You've got Knowledge is Power, so you can reroll psychic tests of 1. You got Preferred Enemy, where you only get to pick one faction to reroll hits rolls of 1 against. So make sure to take that one if you're playing against one opponent regularly and you really hate them. To make sure that they know that you've tailored your list against them, and that was the reason that they lost. let's see here. Rapid Assault is advance and fire without penalty. Silence of the Forge is double wounds. Stalwart is you can only be wounded on a 3+ or better. Stealthy is the same as the first half of Raven Guard. Stoic, +1 leadership. Tactical Withdrawal, you can charge even if you fell back. Warded gives you a 5-up feel no pain against mortal wounds, and Whirlwind of Rage is really nice. This is the one where if you roll 6s to hit, you get an extra hit, which is different than Duelists, which is 6s to hit auto wound. Pretty good. All right, so the next section is the first very unique section of this book, and that's the chapter command. And so this is ways for you to build the chapter command of your chapter. So this lets you make chapter masters, masters of sanctity, master of the forge, etc., etc. And now these rules are available to things like Dark Angels and Blood Angels and Space Wolves. So I think that's great, especially so you don't have to take like Logan Grimnar or Asriel to get the benefits of a chapter master. I think that's very nice. So, Chapter Master has, and they all cost points now instead of costing stratagem points. So it actually costs you out of your main resources if you do want to include these. And these are kind of broken down from the Psychic Awakening ones that were, they gave you a couple of options, like a couple of Warlord traits, a couple of relics. Now it's just, you can take an extra Warlord trait, and you can take this relic instead of your normal relic or Warlord trait, which is nice. All right, so Chapter Master is for a captain. He can become that. And so he gets the Chapter Master rules. So he still gets Rights of War, which is reroll 1s within 6 inches. But then he gets Chapter Master, where you can pick a friendly chapter core or character unit within 6 inches. Until the start of your next command phase, you can reroll to hit rolls. So it's kind of cool that you can pick a character model with this and not necessarily... interesting. I hadn't thought about this yet. So I play a lot of Iron Hands, full disclosure, and like I can make my Dreadnoughts characters. And so getting the Leviathan with full rerolls is probably still pretty good. That's cool. Okay, I'm down with that. Fluffy. I like that. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Then you have the Relic in the Relic and Warlord trait. The Warlord trait is called Master of the Codex. So at the start of your command phase, if this Warlord is on the battlefield, roll a d6. On a 4+, you get a free command point. So this is probably worth 2.5 command points. So if that's worth it to you instead of one of the other Warlord traits, I think by far go for it. That's a good one. Then you have Angel Artifice, which is like a relic armor. It gives you a save characteristic of 2+, and adds 1 to the bearer's wounds and toughness characteristic. So it's pretty good on like a biker captain or something like that to get him up to 2+ armor save and toughness 6. You could double this up with the with him being a salamander, and then you can give him toughness. You can make him toughness 8. That's spicy.
Perfectly balanced.
Yep. So yeah, make sure that guy he's gonna rock your world. Master of Sanctity. So this is for a chaplain. You know an additional litany, and you can recite 2 litanies instead of 1. And then the Warlord trait is Wise Orator, and so this changed from re-rolling a test for an inspiring test to +1. So you still fail on a 1. And then each time this Warlord is selected, uses the commanded oratory stratagem, it only costs 1 command point. And so that one, we'll go over it later, but it lets you automatically pass an inspiring test just to make sure it happens, which is cool. I'm glad they put that in there. And then his relic is the Emperor's Judgment, which means that you can't get rerolls against him. And he becomes scary. So when morale tests are taken, you roll an extra d6 and discard the lowest. No one's for you. Next, we got Master of the Forge. Master of the Forge is auto heal 3 for Blessings of the Omnissiah, which is his repair vehicles ability. And he gets Warden of the Anxious as a Warlord trait if you want. And that's Chapter Dreadnoughts within 6 inches, get +1 strength, +1 attack. So that's very solid. Especially since I think Dreadnoughts are one of the most improved units out of this book. They're very good. And then he gets the Mortis Machina, which is a relic Omnisign Axe, and it gives you +1 strength and +1 damage over regular Omnisign Axe, so 3 flat damage is very nice. And whenever he attacks a vehicle unit, for every save the vehicle fails, it takes a mortal wound as well. All right, we got Chief Librarian. Chief Librarian gives you an extra power, and you can deny one. So it's cast 2, deny 2. And then his relic or his warlord trait is Psychic Mastery for +1 to +1 to psychic tests. And the relic is the Neural Shroud, which gives you Psychic Hood at 24 inches, which basically gives you +1 to deny as well. So if you combine the two of these, I'm pretty sure you get +2 to deny, which is pretty nice for 2 powers. That'll kind of keep you on an even footing, or a more even footing with things like Ahriman, or Lords of Change, or Magnus, that kind of stuff. That's pretty powerful. Chief Apothecary. Now, the Chief Apothecary is a very he's the Chief Apothecary rules from the previous Psychic Awakening were hotly contested as maybe being too powerful, especially for Iron Hand specifically, and so they did change these. He's changed quite a bit. So he can use combat restoratives twice instead of just once, so he can heal 2 different models. So that's a D3 heals. Now, Apothecaries did lose their ability to bring back models naturally, so it makes his Warlord trait a lot better. He auto-heal...
Sorry, I was just clapping over here over that.
He auto-heals 3 instead of D3, so he's always healing 3 wounds, and whenever he brings back a guy, the stratagem costs 0 points. So that's actually legit. And when you bring back a guy, he comes back on full wounds. So for a really tough unit like Terminators or something like that, just being able to make sure that you're healing one back up to full and bringing one back every turn is great. And healing your characters 3 flat damage is really good, especially if they have a lot of wounds, like a Captain in Gravis Armor or something like that. His relic is you can replace a bolt pistol or an absolver bolt pistol with a 18-inch pistol 1, strength 5, -3, 2 flat damage. And if you attack against infantry, you always wound on a 2+, and you have damage 4. So nothing like the Apothecary, headshotting your captain or your like regimental commander for your Imperial Guard and just acing that guy in one hit. Cool. Chapter Ancient. He gets the Chapter Banner ability. So in your command phase, select one friendly Chapter core unit within 6 inches until the start of your next command phase. Each time a model in this unit makes a melee attack, add 1 to the hit roll. So I think that's pretty good, especially in a unit that's getting a -to hit, like a unit of Terminators or something like that. So you can make them go back to weapon skill 3+, and then you can use Fury of the First on them to make them 2+ if you want to. And then that lets them reroll. His Warlord trait is Steadfast Example. And while core units within 6 inches of him, they count as having objective secured. And if you already have objective secure, they count as 1 extra model. So that trait combined with, there's a new Warlord trait that just gives OBSEC to everybody within 6 inches of your Warlord. If you combine the two of those, I think that's a very powerful ability for controlling objectives and making sure that you control them, especially since Marine units aren't the most numerous in the entire game. His relic is Pennant of the Fallen, which lets you make 2 attacks with melee weapons when you die and get to fight again because of the banner. So I think that's pretty rad. The nice thing about Chapter Ancient 2 is that it applies to any Ancient model, and I think that there are 4 different Ancient models now. You have the Blade Guard Ancient, the Terminator Ancient, the Primaris Ancient, and the Company Ancient. So you do have some choices there to upgrade that and choose which one's going to be the best one for your list. And then we have the Chapter Champion, the last one here. So this is the only guy that gets an actual stat boost out of this. He gets 5 attacks and becomes Leadership 9. He also gets -1 to hit in combat because he gets the Skillful Parry rule, and then he's the Exquisite Swordsman. So this model can make a melee attack against enemy character. You can reroll the to wound roll, so he gets reroll to wound against enemy character. His Warlord trait is reroll charges for core and character units within 6, and then his relic is like a really good relic blade. So strength +3, -3 AP, 3 flat damage. So he'll mess up another character, especially since he gets 6 attacks minimum in the first round of combat. And then the chapter or the company champions get heroic intervention 6 inches, so they will mess some stuff up. All right, we're on to stratagems. So, stratagems. There are a lot of stratagems in this book. Not quite as many as Necrons, but there's still a goodly amount. I'm going to kind of go over the ones that have changed and not necessarily hit the ones that are the same. So if I miss one or you want to know what it is, send us a message or post a comment on this video and we'll answer your question. I will answer your question, not John. Yeah. You're welcome, dude. So we have Death to the Traitors. This lets you, for 1 CP, reroll to hit rolls against Heretic Astartes. Honor the Chapter. Now, this is a big change. So this changed to where it used to be 3 CP to fight again with any unit. Now it's just Assault Intercessor squads, but it's only 2 CP. Fury of the First is for Terminator units. I'm sorry. Yeah, it's Terminator models in that unit get +1 to hit, but it can be used on any unit. So if you have the ability to take a Terminator in one of your squads, you can use this on your squad, and the Terminator guy will get +1 to hit. Transhuman, I like this change. They did change that, so it's 1/2 CP. It's only 2 CP if your unit has 6 or more models. Otherwise, it's only 1 command point. That seems like it'll get used a lot more, and I quite like that. Rapid Fire changed. This is for Intercessors or Veteran Intercessor squads. At the end of the shooting phase, you can shoot again with them. Not double the shots, which is cool. Gene Rot Might is the same. Unyielding in the face of the foe, and this is for the new Gravis Armor stratagem. Basically, if you get targeted by an attack that has damage characteristic 1, you can spend 1 CP and get +1 to your saves, which is nice. Only in Death Does Duty End has changed. It used to be Fight on Death for Space Marine characters. Now it only works if you haven't fought yet, so you don't get to fight twice for 2 command points. Pretty much there's no way in this book for you to fight twice if you're a Space Marine unless you're an Assault Intercessor, which I think is good in general because you could do some shenanigan stuff with that. Armor of Contempt is for a vehicle, 5-up ignores wound for mortal wounds. It's worded pretty much exactly the same. Power of the Machine Spirit. 1 Adeptus Astartes Machine Spirit model. So they have to have the keyword Machine Spirit because that's not a rule anymore. They get to count as having full wounds, which is nice. So that's going to be things like Land Raider, Repulsor Executioner, and the Storm Raven. Wisdom of the Ancients changed. It's now 1 CP instead of 2. And you use it in your command phase, and for the rest of the turn, the Dreadnought either gets Rites of Battle or Tactical Precision. So you don't have to choose between the two. Like, if you want to use him for, like, you don't have a Lieutenant in your army, you can spend 1 CP and make a Dreadnought a Lieutenant, which I like quite a lot. Let's see, you've got Commanding Oratory. This lets you auto-pass an Inspiring check for a Chaplain, which is great. You don't have to roll for it, and since the tactical reroll can't be used on that, I really like that one. And since it is 2 CP, if you did take a Master of Sanctity, you get this for 1 CP instead, which is a nice savings. Combat Revival is for an Apothecary to bring back a guy. We did talk about that a little bit earlier. Relic of the Chapter and Hero of the Chapter. So these have both changed to where they're not unlimited. You can't just spend every command point and give all of your characters relics anymore. You're limited based on the size of the game. So you can take, in a 2,000 point game, you can use this twice, so you can have up to 3 relics. And same with Hero of the Chapter to give Warlord traits. I like this because it's more than you could originally do with Hero of the Chapter, because originally you could only have 1 guy with 2 and 1 guy with 1. Now you can have 1 guy with 2 and 2 guys with 1, so you can have, 4 Warlord traits. And who wouldn't want to have more Warlord traits than you have characters, even in a 2,000 point game? Not this guy. That's who. Hit and Run Warfare is a new one. This is for Biker, Land Speeder, or Storm Speeder. And they can still shoot even if they fall back. So that's definitely a nice one. Hammer of Wrath. This one changed a lot. So it's for a jump pack unit, and after they complete a charge, roll 1d6 for each model within engagement range. And for every time you roll above the target unit's toughness, you get a mortal wound. So if you're fighting against somebody who's like got a bunch of guardsmen or something like that, and you charge with 10 assault marines, every 4+ is a mortal wound. So probably you're doing 5 wounds just with the stratagem, which is a good expenditure of that. Next, we've got Skilled Rider. They changed this from being an invulnerable save that you get for moving to a -1 to hit, but it's reactive, so you don't have to spend it until they target your unit with a shot. Uncompromising Fire lets you pick one Adeptus Astartes unit from your army that's performing an action. They can still shoot without the action failing. 2 command points. This is really good. It just lets you pile on a little bit more fire and use maybe a more expensive unit to utilize an action that you wouldn't normally want to do. So I can see Marine players using this on like Terminators that deep struck into your opponent's deployment zone to like plant a Scrambler, and using 2 CP, shooting the Terminators with everything, and then it's a backfield threat, and they deployed a Scrambler. So you don't have to waste like a really expensive unit on an action that's kind of a throwaway. Steady Advance is 2 CP. It lets your Adeptus Astartes count as having been stationary after they make a normal move. Not a fallback move, Salamanders players, but a normal move. So this one's a brand new one. Well, it's not. Well, they reworded it. So Adaptive Strategy lets you move the combat tactics back one, or combat doctrines back one. This just lets you pick, as long as your Warlord is on the table, you can pick one unit, core unit, sorry, and they get all of the doctrines at the same time. So they get Tactical, Assault, and Devastator. Suppressive Fires from Whirlwinds. This is one of my favorites. I know it's one of John's favorites too. This one, basically, when you shoot a weapon that has a blast ability and a hit is scored, then until the start of your next turn, the target unit can't fire Overwatch, set to defend, and can't be selected to fight, and it gets fight last. So it really pushes that, like, this unit is like suppressed, like I shot them with missiles, get out of here. Terror Troops is a new one that makes Reavers maybe playable. I think it's pretty good. So it's 2 command points. Use it in your command phase. Select a Reaver unit in your army. That unit gains Terror Troops and Aura. So until the start of your next command phase, when an enemy unit is within 3 inches of it, it loses OBSEC or any similar abilities. And when a Reaver unit makes a normal move, advance, or charge move within 3 inches, every enemy unit... and a unit within 3 inches of a unit performing an action, roll 2d6. If it exceeds the enemy's leadership, the action fails. So just like a good way of actually like stopping something that you can't necessarily kill. Like I was talking about in the Necron preview, right? That you could, as long as you could stay alive on this objective, like your opponent couldn't stop you, right? Well, this could stop you. Granted, he's got to roll a 10, but still, it could stop you. You've got Guerrilla Tactics. So this is for a Phobos unit. You basically get to pick them up off the board. And they have to be more than 6 inches away from enemy models. You pick them up off the board, and they get to deep strike back in. Oh no, they just come in from strategic reserve. Sorry, so they'll get to come in on the flank or something like that, which is nice. Orbital Bombardment. Now, Orbital Bombardment did change again quite a bit. This is actually a usable stratagem now. Like before, you was rolling a bunch of 6s and like maybe you would get it, but now you have to have your Warlord on the table. It doesn't have to be a captain. Select 1 point on the battlefield and place a marker on that point. At the start of your next command phase, roll a d6 for each unit within 6 inches of the center of that marker, adding 1 if the unit is within 3 inches of the center of the marker instead. And -1 if it's a character. On a 2 through 5, they take D3 mortal wounds. On a 6+, they suffer D6 mortal wounds, and then the marker is removed. You can only use it 1 time. So, like, just as an objective denial to punish your opponent from, like, wanting to get to the center of the table, I think it's really good. It's great for, like, kind of de-incentivizing your opponent from getting close to, like, the objectives. So, like, kind of putting it at the edge of 3 inches closer to your opponent, and then sticking a unit on the other side of it so you can still capture it, but then they still get hit with the explosion is pretty cool. Auspex Scan is the same, except it has to be infantry. No, that was like that before. But there's no minus to hit. 2 command points for that. So that is greatly improved. Tremor Shells. So the Thunderfire cannon stats did change. It's still, if you use tremor shells, it's still -1 to wound. You can't do it against a Titanic or Fly unit, but they still have movement and subtract 2 from advance and charge rolls. So it's a little bit worse because it doesn't have advance and charge rolls, but -2 is almost the same as that. Maybe not on charge rolls, but for advance rolls for sure. Yeah, still good, still very good. Shock and Awe. When an Adeptus Astartes shock grenade or land speed or storm is selected to shoot, select an enemy unit within 6. Until the start of your next turn, the selected unit can't overwatch or set to defend, and they're -1 to hit. So that's pretty nice. Assault launchers, and this is selecting an Adeptus Astartes assault launchers unit. Now this is one thing they're doing. They're putting keywords onto unit profiles for war gear that they have so they can utilize stratagems. And so assault launchers don't actually do anything anymore unless you spend the points for the stratagem. And so use it at the start of your charge phase, select your assault launchers unit from Adeptus Astartes, and then 1 enemy unit, excluding vehicles or monsters, that is within 9 inches of them. The enemy unit can either brace or duck for cover. If the unit braces, they take D3 mortal wounds. If the unit ducks for cover, then they're -1 attack, and they can't overwatch or set to defend. So again, kind of pinning guys in before you shoot. This would also be something on like Land Raider with the assault launchers, like the Redeemer or the Crusader. There's a Melt-A-Bomb strat. In case you didn't know, Melt-A-Bombs were a 4-inch range grenade that you could throw. But now they're not. Now it's a stratagem. When an Adeptus Astartes Melt-A-Bomb unit is selected to fight, 1 model from the unit can only make 1 attack, and it must target an enemy vehicle, but if it hits, it does 2d3 mortal wounds. That's pretty good. Grav Pulse. Oh man. In your movement phase, when an Adeptus Astartes repulsor... Oh, you can choose 2 different effects. When an Adeptus Astartes repulsor field unit, so this is going to be repulsors, repulsor executioners, the new gladiators, also impulsors, they can fall back and still shoot. Or during your opponent's charge phase, if you get charged, you can make them -2 inches to charge. Now this is not, well, it would be cumulative with repulsor field if those units had one.
Spoilers.
Yeah, but they don't have that. They don't have that rule anymore. So get used to it. You got Hellfire Shells. Hellfire Shells is like it's the same, except if it's a monster unit that you shoot with Hellfire Shells, and this is like sacrificing your heavy bolter shots for 1 heavy bolter shot that does D3 mortals. If it's a monster, though, you do 3 flat mortals instead of 1d3. Flak Missile is now 2d3 mortal wounds instead of just 1d3 mortal wounds, so that's great, but it has to be against an aircraft. Smoke Screen is a stratagem as well now. 1 CP to give you a reactive -1 to hit for those units for the entire phase. So it's kind of like Lightning Fast Reflexes, except it only costs 1 command point. All right, Warlord traits. There's a lot of Space Marine Warlord traits. Obviously, you're going to have 1 unique one for every single chapter, as well as 6 generic ones for normal Space Marines, and then 6 ones for Vanguard Space Marines. The Vanguard ones are pretty much exactly the same as they were before, so I'm not going to touch on those. But I will talk about the Space Marine ones, because they have changed. So you got Fear Made Manifest. Enemy units within 6 inches of the Warlord are -1 leadership and -1 to combat attrition. That's pretty nice. Imperium Sword is reroll charge rolls for the Warlord, and you get +1 attack and strength if they charge or perform heroic intervention. That's very nice. Iron Resolve is +1 to the Warlord's wounds characteristic, and the Warlord gets a 6-up ignore damage. Champion of Humanity is each time the Warlord, if it's within engagement range of enemy character units, then it fights until that fight is resolved, add 1 to the Warlord's attacks characteristic. And each time the Warlord makes a melee attack against a character, you get +1 to hit and +1 to wound. So that's pretty good. Storm of Fire. When a friendly chapter core unit within 6 inches of the Warlord, each time a model in that unit makes a ranged attack on an unmodified wound roll of 6, improve AP by 1. Note this does not stack with doctrines. And then finally you have Rites of War. While a friendly chapter core or character unit is within 6 inches of the Warlord, they have objective secured. Oh my god. Like, that is the most powerful Warlord trait in the entire game, I think. Like, that's so good. Yeah, that's really good. Alright, so then we have chapter Warlord traits. So we have Dark Angels, and this one is Brilliant Strategist, and this is brand new, actually. So this replaces the Brilliant Strategist that Dark Angels had before. So you get to pick a friendly Dark Angels unit within 6 inches of your Warlord, and then until the next command phase, if the Tactical Doctrine is active, they count as being in Devastator, or if Assault Doctrine is active, then they count as being in Tactical Doctrine. So you can kind of walk back the steps for one unit, which is pretty cool, and get one unit 2 turns, or maybe even 3 turns of Devastator Doctrine. White Scars, same. Beast Slayer for Space Wolves. +1 attack if they're engaged with a monster or vehicle, and they get +1 to hit and +1 to wound if they're attacking a monster or vehicle. So it's sort of like Champion of Humanity, but like against monsters and vehicles instead of characters. Imperial Fist is Architect of War. You ignore AP -1, and as long as they have cover. Crimson Fist is the same. Basically, they get to get back up from death with D3 wounds remaining on a 4+ once. Black Templar is Oathkeeper. They get a 6-inch Heroic Intervention and can move 6 inches. Blood Angels is Speed of the Primarch. You get to fight first. Flesh Tearers is Merciless Butcher. The Warlord, as long as there are 5 or more enemy models within 3 inches of it, can make D3 extra attacks. Iron Hands get Adept of the Omnissiah, which is... let's see. At the end of your movement phase, unless this Warlord is a Tech Marine, it can repair a friendly vehicle. They get 1 wound. If it is a Tech Marine, then they heal D3 +1 wound. Ultramarine gets Adept of the Codex for 5+ command point regeneration. Salamanders get Anvil of Strength for +2 strength on the Warlord. Raven Guard get Echo of the Ravenspire, which means that the Warlord can like nope out and just leave and come back deep strike in. And then Deathwatch get Vigilance Incarnate. And if you're in your command phase, you can select 1 friendly Deathwatch core unit within 6. Each time you do, select 1 battlefield roll until the start of your next command phase. Each time a model in that unit makes an attack against the enemy unit with that battlefield roll, you can reroll 2 and roll 1. So this is kind of lets one unit switch up what their doctrine is or whatever the what their preferred enemy target is. All right. Relics for Space Marines. Relics for Space Marines are great. They are also very similar to how the relics were before. So these are kind of some of the generic relics that you can take. Of course, each chapter is going to have their own special issue war gear and chapter relics according to their homeworld. I'm just going to go through the ones that I believe have changed the most. Most of these have not changed very much at all. So things like Teeth of Terra, a lot of the shooting weapons are basically the same. So I probably won't go over those. Benediction of Fury is the same. Shockingly, I cannot believe that is still the same. Like, that is such a good relic. And so is Teeth of Terra. Like, those seem like auto takes, and for them to still be in there is very surprising to me. But, hey, it's the relics, and it's relics everybody gets. Now, Blood Angels get Teeth of Terra. That's pretty gross. That seems like a really efficient Smash Captain. And also, Dark Angels get that, and Space Wolves. Man, Space Wolves with Teeth of Terra would be good, too. All right, so we got the Armor Indominus. Gives you +1 wound, gives you a 2-up save, and once per battle you can get a 3-up invulnerable save. One more thing to keep in mind with these as well. They still do have the caveat: vehicle units cannot take these relics, so don't be putting these on your Chaplain Dreadnoughts.
Yeah.
Shield Eternal is the new Storm Shield rules, and it's a 4-up invulnerable save, +1 to armor saves, and you get a 5-up Feel No Pain, which is nice. You got Standard of the Emperor Ascendant. So this is for an ancient model. At 3 inches to the range of the banner, the banner's Astartes banner rule, which is the get back up and fight or shoot. Every time a morale test is taken by a chapter core unit within range of the Astartes banner, you can reroll the test. This is important as we will get to the new rules for End They Shall No Fear, which has changed. Primarch's Wrath is the same. Burning Blade is the same. Both are. Burning Blade got a lot better, I think, just in placement. I think there's some good play there. Purgatus is the same, or Purgatorius, yeah, whatever. Let's see. We've got the Reliquary of Galathamor, and that's Primaris model only, and it's not a banner anymore. I believe it was an ancient banner before. And this gives you an aura of Psyker units within 18 inches, subtract 1 from Psychic tests. And each time a Psychic test is failed, on a 4+, they take D3 mortal wounds. Bellicose Bolt Rifles is the same. Lament is the same. Ghostweave Cloak. This lets you move through models if you have a Camo Cloak. So this is a Phobos kind of thing. And you're -1 to hit. Tome of Malkador very specifically lets you take 1 psychic power from a lore that you would, or from a discipline that you know. So this lets you split up psychic powers between different disciplines, which is great. And it's an additional power. So you know, like, your 2 powers as a normal librarian, and then you'll also get an extra power. So you'll have some really great choice, especially if your chapter discipline only has like 1 or 2 good options. Benediction of Fury, again, that's the same, so good. Honor Vehement is more or less the same. They changed the wording to kind of score some stuff up, and it only affects core units anymore. But basically, your units all get +1 attack. They don't no longer have Shock Assault while they're within range. And Vox Asperitum is +3 inches to the range of the bear's aura abilities, to maximum of 9 inches, so you don't get the Omni Scrambler buff that they used to. All right, so Librarius Discipline. And the Obscuration Discipline. Now, they added keywords to psychic powers, like whether they're blessings or witchfires. I think those are the 2 types. Blessing, witchfires. Oh, there are maledictions as well. So for powers that you cast on your own units, it's mostly only... It's mostly core units that get affected if it affects friendly units. But there are some exceptions to that rule. Like Veil of Time, you pick a friendly chapter unit, so that doesn't have to be core. They get to reroll advance and charge rolls and fight first. Might of Heroes is +1 strength, toughness, and attacks, but is only a core or character model within 12. Null Zone is the same. Psychic Scourge is a Witchfire, Warp Charge 6. If manifested, select an enemy unit within 18, roll a d6 and add the Psyker's leadership. Then your opponent rolls a d6 and adds that unit's leadership. If you score higher than your opponent, they take d3 mortals. If you scroll equal to, then it's 1 mortal. If it's less than your opponent, then you get nothing. Fury of the Ancients, still a straight line. People take mortal wounds for each unit that it goes through. And Psychic Fortress is a lot better. It's a Warp Charge value 6. If manifested, then until the start of your next Psychic phase, when a friendly chapter unit is within 6 inches of the Psyker, they get a 5-up invulnerable save. I think that's pretty solid power, especially if you're trying to protect like a castle. It's nice that Iron Hands and things like that will get this for free from a character that's not a librarian, but it is an option that you can take if you want to take that. Obscuration is pretty much the same. You do get, let's see, Temporal Corridor. This one is interesting. This is the number 6 power. So before you could use this for Reavers to let them like assault. So you pick a Phobos unit within 6. That unit can't shoot or fight this turn. If it's not in engagement range with an enemy model, it can make a normal or advanced move. If it advances, it just gets to add 6, so it gets to move 12 inches. That's pretty cool. It's nice for a unit that is trying to take an action. For example, one way that you could use this is there are 2 objectives that are just outside of 12 inches of each other, and you're doing an action on one, but you want to move it to the other one. So you start doing the action on that one, cast this power, and then Phobos move to the other objective that you couldn't quite get to. So that's pretty good. Those are pretty nice. Litanies of Battle for sure only affect core and character units. So Litany of Hate is the same. Litany of Faith is the same. Catechism of Fire is the same. Exhortation of Rage is different. This just gives +1 to wound and melee. Mantra of Strength is +1 attack and strength to the priest and +1 to damage, so that one's the same. Recitation of Focus is +1 to hit for a core character unit. And then Canticle of Hate is +2 to assaults, and also gives you the extra 3 inches for pylon and consolidate moves. So that's really powerful. That one is still probably by far the best one. It's very good. All right. Space Marine chapter approved rules. So these ones here are for your mission specific, faction specific secondaries. So you have one for Purge the Enemy called Codex Warfare. And so if you select this objective, you score victory points as follows. Score 1 victory point at the end of the battle to a maximum of 5 for each enemy unit that was destroyed as a result of an attack made with a heavy or grenade weapon by an Adeptus Astartes unit from your army while the Devastator Doctrine was active for your army. And then they do this for each of the other doctrines. So they do it for Assault, they do it for Tactical. This one is going to be really hard to score, in all honesty. I think that's really tough. Like, you can kill a bunch of stuff with Devastator Doctrine, but it has to be the doctrine that your army has active. So even if you can rewind doctrines or mess around with which doctrine is active, it's not going to let you go back, use those units to count for that total. So killing 15 different units in your opponent's army to get full 15 points is going to be really tough. I think that if you have like good tactical and good assault doctrine stuff, it's still probably going to be hard to achieve. Like even if you're 2 out of 3, and then even if you get max points for that stuff, you're still only getting 10 points. And you have to score it with the weapons that you pick. So I think this one's very difficult. I'm not sure what they were thinking with that one. I think that killing 15 units is very difficult to max points on. And with specific weapon types. So you got Battlefield Supremacy. So this one is score 3 victory points at the end of a battle round if you control 1 or more objective markers that were controlled by your opponent at the start of the battle round. And an Adeptus Astartes unit from your army is within range of the objective marker. This one's not bad. I think it's probably pretty good. Just if your opponent is on objectives and you're pushing them off objectives, that's amazing. You don't even have to control the objective marker. So, like, if you killed a character that was next to an objective, you would still be able to score this objective as long as you could get within 3, even if you were just, like, touching the other enemy unit. So this one seems pretty doable, and 3 points is not bad. I think it's really good if you go second, because then you can really maximize that end of battle round scoring. No Mercy, No Respite. They have the Oaths of Moment. As a secondary. I actually really like this one. I think this one's probably one that I would take if I were playing Space Marines. And it depends, of course, on the mission, but I think it's really good. So if you select this objective, score victory points at the end of each battle round for achieving the following 3 oaths. Oath of Valor. Score 1 victory point if any character, vehicle, or monster was destroyed by an Adeptus Astartes unit from your army during this battle round. Okay, that's pretty easy. Oath of Honor. Score 1 victory point at the end of the battle round, so long as no Adeptus Astartes units from your army failed the morale test, and provided no Adeptus Astartes units from your army fell back from combat this turn. I think that's pretty doable. Falling back from combat is, depending on your Space Marine build, is probably, like for Ultramarines and stuff like that, is part of the deal. Or White Scars. Like, I'm not going to take this with White Scars. Well, maybe. I don't know. Still probably not. And then finally, Oath of Duty. Score 2 victory points at the end of the battle round if an Adeptus Astartes unit from your army is wholly within 6 inches of the center of the battlefield. So that one's pretty easy to do. I think you're probably... This is kind of like one of the ones like... Engage on all fronts. To where you're just... If you're around the board and doing stuff, you're probably going to score some points off of this almost every single turn. So yeah, I quite like that one.
You've mastered the art of the Stanley. You've downloaded the ITC Battles app. You've loaded your dice to guarantee your charge. Now perfect your game with Mob Rules measuring accessories. made of the finest acrylic and carrying the skill of the Danny, the tactics of the Dave, and something positive about John. Get yours now at hammerheadgames.net.